we'd like to start the meeting here, and if everybody'd silence their cell phones just so we don't have any interruptions, that would be greatly appreciated. And Director Kellogg is going to lead us in the invocation.
Let's all stand.
You rise.
Oh Lord, I pray for a peaceful meeting with good conduct on all sides, and may we have some humor and thought as we serve the community and our jobs, and look at these three candidates and do the best we can. In Jesus Christ, our Savior's name, amen.
Amen. Now, the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Bill.
Anytime.
Roll call, please, Georgianne.
Director Van Hansen.
Present.
Director Dr. Johnston. Present. President Mark Solis.
Here.
Director Bill Kellogg.
Here, I had a choice tonight. All three of you did a different one.
And the Division 5 Director Stevens.
Right. Very good. So that's exactly what where we're headed to. So we'll go right to number 2, appointment of Director of Division 5. And we have 3 candidates that have expressed interest. And so I thought we'd just go ahead and, if you don't mind, we'll have you come up to the podium and just give us a little brief description of why you're interested to be a director. So I think we'll start with Lee Brown, just in the order that we have in the agenda packet, if that's okay. Lee, if you don't mind.
I'm Lee Brown. We've lived here, I was just thinking about it on the way up. We've lived here 34 years. Our daughter was 6 months old when we came up and opened a hardware store. My wife and I are both bankers. I retired. She went on to other, bigger and better things, raising our 2 girls up here. From the Bay Area, we thought this was a much better place to raise a family.
Lee, can you talk up a little bit? I'm hard of hearing.
Me too. I'll turn my hearing aids up. Is this? Okay, it is. Anyway, we've been up here. We opened a hardware store, ran it for 10 years. We had a business plan. I spent 26 years before that advising people that were starting a new business to be sure that you have a business plan. And paramount, follow your business plan. Well, at the end of 10 years, my wife and I sat down in the kitchen of the house we're in now and said, nope, it's not doing it. So January, we decided to close it up, and April 15th, we shut the doors and sold everything to the walls and shut the doors and went home. So, and then I went back in the banking business for another 15 years and was in charge of various and sundry things for Butte Community Bank. I retired 10 years ago. And of late, I've been cutting down dead trees and digging up Toyon like everybody else and, doing what we do in Paradise. But things are looking good. And water up here and anywhere is super important. And the quality of water is even more important. I've been watching things since the 8th. I've been up here every other day or every day since the 8th of November. So I've seen a lot. And there's been a horrendous, an unbelievable turnaround in the attitude of PIB and the people on the boots on the ground, out in the field. It's really, really heartwarming to see the attitudes change of people out there and the guys, Jim's people, the people that are doing the hard work out there. It's refreshing, really refreshing. Plus PG&E, and believe it or not, we're great guys. And that's about all I have to say for right now.
Okay, well, thank you. So we might have a few questions. Dan, would you like to start?
So your plan, I'm assuming you say you're coming up here, you lost your home?
Nope,
No?
nope, still standing. I got dummy off my forehead, didn't I? I was here until about 4 o'clock.
Okay.
But we live just above Wayland
Yeah.
and Foster.
Yeah, I know where you
on
live.
Toyon. So,
When you said you were coming up, I assumed you meant from Chico. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
well, we have 2 homes up here. We had one that we had for our daughter and our home. And I just finished remodeling our daughter's house in April of 18. It used to be in a nice little package inside the foundation. But my daughter was in Chico.
Oh.
So it's all good.
Good. Shelby, do you have any questions?
I think we have a pretty diverse board, and I wonder what you think your strongest skill set is you'd bring to the board to complement the board we currently have.
Pretty pragmatic. I like to do my own research. I like to. Banking business is checks and balances. And I've been pretty much a checker to be sure it balances. That's what I would bring to the board. I'm a pretty much single-minded thinker. I think for myself. I don't get swayed. I really like to stick with the facts and keep the drama out of it. And that was my job for a lot of my banking career, was to sift it out and get down to the facts.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Bill, do you have any questions for Lee Freewater?
I think Lee's going to add something to the board that we're missing right now, and that's the financial background he has. He's been self-employed. He handles money. I was one of his customers when he had the hardware store, and he was certainly did that well and made friends and everything. And I've known him for all these years and found him to be a straight shooter, even in times when he might disagree with you on something. So I think he'd be an excellent addition to the board with his background and experience in the banking business and so forth. None of the rest of us have that kind of training. So. And having known Lee for many years and been a customer of his.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Lee, I just had a question. We're heading into uncharted territory. We already are in uncharted territory right now. Okay. So, I mean, it's not going to be business as usual. It's not going to be like the financing of things. It's not business as usual. So my question is, do you think you can be forward thinking and think out of the box when it comes to finances? Because that's kind of where we're headed. Everything's open. The table's open here.
Let me just give you one of my jobs
Okay.
in the bank for Butte Community Bank. In order for Butte Community Bank to be a premier bank,
Uh-huh.
the delinquency ratio had to be under 3%.
What was that? Excuse me.
Under a premier bank, you had to be under 3%.
Under 3%.
Right. Delinquency.
Oh, I see.
Delinquency, 3%. While I created the special asset department and ran it for close to 10 years before I retired, the delinquency ratio never went up above 0.5.
Okay.
In order to do that, you have to, as I said before, boots on the ground. And that's what I sat in a meeting with senior management, and they looked at him and said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I'm going to side with Lee. And he said, well, why is that? He says, because he's the guy with the boots on the ground. He's the guy that knows exactly what's happening.
Uh-huh.
And the way I did it was I went out dressed just like this. A banker out in the field talking to ranchers, talking to contractors in jeans, and they thought, who is this guy? And we solve the problems, but we solve the problems because I'm an old-fashioned banker. When I have a customer, I know who his wife is, where she works, where the kids go to school, how long they've been in business, what their problems are, how many things they've got, how many balls they've got in the air, which is generally a lot, and sit down and talk to them. Sit down with a yellow pad, fix up a impromptu financial statement, and work it out. I repossessed, in 10 years, I repossessed one car. I foreclosed on some houses, but mainly because the borrower gave up and, just said, I can't do this anymore. If they were willing to work, we worked it out. And that's what we need to do today. We need to sit down, talk to one another, and work it out. And I just had a brain failure here.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, she was very active in town. We sat on a planning commission together, and you all know who she is. Her husband was the mayor, and he passed away a lot of years ago.
Look at me.
Yeah, well, anyway, Loretta Griffith.
Griffin.
Oh, yes, Loretta.
Loretta and I sat on a planning commission together for 4 or 5 years, and we would have Donnybrook's sitting where you guys are, and they would say, well, they would come up to me or they'd come up to Loretta and say, well, don't you guys like each other? And I said, I love Loretta. Loretta speaks her mind, and at the end of the day, we have two minds together moving forward. And that's the only way you can do
Okay.
it. If you get loggerhead, you're nowhere.
Sounds like you like the personal service side
Yeah,
of it.
we disagreed on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes she would say, okay, Lee, I agree with you. And sometimes I would say, okay, Loretta, yeah, that makes sense. So,
Very good.
it was a give and take situation. But we didn't back down. We stayed our course until we were convinced. That's the only way you can do it.
Very good.
Everything he's saying about Loretta is true.
Yeah.
And I dealt with her, had some cattle raising, and I have my own stories about Loretta.
Yeah, she was.
She's definitely independent and had her own idea.
I love
She's
her.
in Arizona.
She just moved.
Right.
I was really sad to see her go. She lived down the street.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate that.
Neat lady.
Dan?
I'm done.
I just have a follow-up. So I assume you've been following what we've been discussing here locally at the board meetings, specifically around the future of PID and the potential for an intertie project?
That's very interesting, and yes, it's very interesting.
I'm just curious.
I don't have enough information to make a decision.
Okay, fair enough.
I just don't. It's complicated. It's not. I can tell you what the word means, but so what? What are the particulars? And Kevin's got his hands full. But I like the idea. I like the idea a lot that we're going to keep control, because I'd be really jumping up and down if we lost control.
Thanks.
Bill, do you have any further questions for Lee?
No, I don't. I really don't. I don't think I need to have any more.
Okay. All right. You have any questions for us, Lee?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's really that and some of the financial things that I've seen that I have questions about. I'm not making a decision about it. I see some things I want an answer to. The thing of selling water to sustain our town financially, PID financially, is an excellent idea. And if the ducks get in a row, it sounds pretty good at 6.5%, right? Out of our pockets
6.5%.
for the construction.
We haven't got that far into it yet.
It seems to me I saw something about 6.5% on that. Anyway, it's whatever it is, we've got to make it work. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the interest, and
thank you.
thank you. Okay, Tim Fulton. I'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the position.
My name is Tim Fulton. I live on the end of Scottwood Road. My house survived. My wife and I are both nurses at Feather River. She's at the Cancer Center, which used to be at the hospital, but now it's in Chico, out at Philadelphia Square. And I work at the clinic. I've always worked at the clinic for about the last 3 years. I inherited the house from my father, who was Len Fulton, who died in 2011. I was in business most of my life. I was a managing director at FedEx Express for 23 years. Southern California, the New York area, Connecticut, New Jersey, and a little bit in Memphis, Tennessee. My wife didn't want to live in Tennessee, so we moved back to Connecticut. And, things were really good for us until the campfire. We had, really solid, we worked 4 days and then had 3 days off together. And so everything was hunky-dory, and everything's been kind of uprooted for us. We went to live with my stepmom in Chico, and then ended up, my wife and her sister own a house in Fort Bragg, and we ended up, somebody was going to die if we still lived with my mom in Chico, because my aunt was there, and there were 9 of us. And so we moved to Fort Bragg. We were there for about a month, and then when they decided to open up the clinic, we came back, and I helped get the clinic up off the ground. My dad was on the PID. My interest is to protect the Paradise Irrigation District's water rights, and I believe how the PID works is that, and I'm not sure the structure, that every homeowner has a stake in the PID, and I'd like to see that continue. I mean, I read some of that. The people that formed the PID really suffered for that, and to have that happen, they put out a bond. I guess we're all familiar with that, and some of them lost their houses and whatnot. And I like the idea of selling water to somebody. I just wouldn't want to sell the rights to the water. We create a pipeline that goes down the Skyway, and that's good, and we'll sell you some water for as long as you want to pay for it. We're just not going to sell you the rights to it. And I guess there's some conversation about the Miocene Canal as well. I don't know. My house survived. The property was decimated. My detached garage burned down. And, I was impressed with everybody that worked on my house. PG&E, PID, Cal OES. Couldn't have been, more supportive. And I would hope that everybody that wants to come back and live in Paradise gets that same treatment. I have potable water in my house. I installed a Culligan water system before I knew that I had potable water, and but I have had it tested a bunch of times. It's come back clean. So, I'm really impressed. Because the early reports were that it was not going to, that was not going to happen. It was going to be a bunch of years. And I look on the map. You had it up here a little while ago, and I'm really impressed with how many people have potable water. So.
All right. Well, thank you.
To answer your question, protecting the water rights and helping people to move back to Paradise and get good treatment.
Fair enough. Thank you. Bill, do you have any questions for Tim?
Lynn, his father, served the town in a lot of ways, and he was a good fellow. Liked him very much. The only trouble he had, he ran for supervisor one year and thought he had it made, and got surprised, but everybody gets surprised sooner or later. Is there any clubs or anything you've been active in since you came back?
Not so much. I play golf whenever I can. Go to Fort Bragg and play at Little River Inn, where my brother-in-law has a membership. And I hit Bidwell and some of the golf courses in Chico. I was sad to see Tuscan Ridge go, but yeah, that's about it.
You don't miss the rocks, huh?
True. Thank you, Will.
And you've had business experience and everything, and that's good for you. I don't think my daughter's a nurse in the birth unit at Inland, Melissa Fitzgerald. So I understand about the long hours and so forth. She had been at Feather River, of course, and moved down there. And she lost her seniority, so she works a lot of nights now. Is there anything that you would like to see the district do that it isn't doing?
You've really exceeded my expectations to this point. So many people in Paradise didn't have a plan B. I mean, we all know, probably several people that didn't have a plan B. And I would like to see them be able to get back on their property, to get potable water, electricity, permit to build their house, I have some neighbors that are living in trailers with kids, I really feel for them. I just think that anything that we can do for our fellow residents to move back to Paradise. There's so many people that are living, in Gridley and, Lime Saddle Marina that need to get back here. They were residents here for many years, and despite whatever their situation was before the fire, they have a right to come back. So no, I don't have any
Okay.
criticisms of the PID at all.
Well, I probably asked you enough questions. I'll let somebody else ask
Okay.
you one question.
Thanks, Bill. Shelby?
I'm just curious about your thoughts around what we're currently proposing with the Intertie project.
To go to Chico or the Miocene Canal, I guess that the Chico project is more forward than the Miocene Canal thing, I'm assuming. I think it's all good as long as you don't sell the water rights. I lived in Southern California for a bunch of years and got a Cal Water bill in the mail for a couple of $100, and I really, when I moved here in 2011 and got my $50 bill in the mail, it was real. Man, I was in Connecticut before I came here, so it was a lot more than a couple of $100. It's really a beautiful thing, and I think I'm paying like $40 now. A lot of people would like the water rights to Paradise, and we're never far away from a drought or a flood. It's never kind of the in-between. I've lived in the East Coast more than I lived in Southern California, and so I'm used to the rain. And there's always it hasn't rained before a few days ago for about 8 months, 7 or 8 months. I guess we had some rain in late May, but the drought years are coming. They're just going to happen, and save for a rainy day kind of thing. And the people that formed the PID really, really sacrificed. And so I think, to hold those water rights is the greatest thing.
Great. Dan?
To go backwards a little bit, I've met your father, and he was a great guy, and I'm sorry for your loss. On the going in side, this is a pretty, kind of straightforward position, but there is a lot of time that you need to commit. There's other committees that you're on. There's a from time to time can be a mass of phone calls and emails where citizens are trying to get something done that they don't feel that it's one of those you can't please everybody type of things. And you kind of putting out fires or maybe at least directing them to the right section and those things. It's a pretty large time commitment, a lot larger than I thought coming in. Are you prepared to make that commitment?
I am. I recently went part-time at the clinic. I'm probably going to retire. I'm kind of throwing that up in the air a little bit. My house is paid off, and I really don't have any debt. And I have a pension that I get every month. So, so I'm prepared to do that. Probably in the next 6 months I'll retire and call it good.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Greg, I knew your dad too, and or Tim, excuse me, Tim. Yeah, he was a good guy. I knew him through Theater on the Ridge. So anyway, very missed in the community, definitely. I had kind of a similar question because I thought, you're working at the clinic, and I know how hospitals and clinics can be with shifts, and shifts change, and all of a sudden now you're on a swing shift or something like that, and got a meeting in the evening, but sounds like you're kind of backing off on that a little bit.
I'm going to back off. I'm going to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in the morning.
Okay.
Currently, yeah.
Okay.
The clinic was going strong right out of the gate there, but they've lost some medical providers. Dr. Thorpe stepped down as the medical director. Dr. Sahagian went to Enloe. Most of the specialists, Dr. Mansell, Dr. Pastana, the neurologist, Dr. Chobanoff, are either in Oroville or Enloe. I think Dr. Mansell is in Lodi or somewhere in the Sacramento area. And so they've, encountered a period of, like a low census population of patients, and so it's convenient for me to go part-time and possibly retire. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, just reiterating what Dan says, there's more to it than you think. More to it than meets the eye, shall we say. More time commitments, but thank you. Sounds like you've thought it all out. Appreciate that. Bill, any other questions?
No, I don't have any more questions.
I'm good.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us you'd like to have?
No questions.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it very much. All right. Greg? Greg Moyers. Appreciate it.
Picky. Is it Princess and the Pea thing, or?
That's right.
All right, so I guess the first thing I'm going to do is answer your first question first instead of last. Why am I here? I've been in Paradise for a long, long time, and Paradise has given me my livelihood. I've owned a jewelry store. I had a jewelry store here in town for 10 years. I was an executive director at one of the largest residential care facilities here, and I've been a real estate broker for many years up here. And my income was really based here. So I think it's time to give back. So a little quick resume on me: 21-year Air Force veteran, did law enforcement and Air Force recruiting service. While I was there, my last job actually was a regional manager with recruiting service out of Chico. I had all the recruiters from Sacramento up to the Oregon border, Nevada state line out to the coast. Chico was sort of central. That's where my office landed. My wife is a nurse practitioner at Enloe Cancer Center. She grew some roots with her job. I retired. We've been here ever since. And my kids went to school here to full length. So, I am part of the community. It's kind of funny. He's going through a bunch of his names. I know all those folks. Probably sold him a house or something or whatever. But as far as experience goes with budgets and stuff, my residential care facility was, like I said, largest in Northern California. $24 million a year or so in budget I had to handle myself with 6 directors below me. 65 plus full-time employees. over 24 hours. So I was dealing with those things that you were trying to talk about when that person doesn't show up and move them around. So I'm used to doing sort of like that, multitasking all the time. And one of the things about me is I am very firm in my beliefs, but I can be swayed. If something's presented to me with information that I did not have access to beforehand, I do take that into consideration in the overall decision. That's why they have a board, not an individual making all the decisions, right? So you can work together and come up with some kind of a solution. Other than that, like I said, I'm here just to give back to my community.
Great.
And I am aware of the time. So.
Well, thank you. Shelby, do you like to ask? Rick?
I guess same question. Your thoughts and feelings about the Intertie proposed project?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of tap dance on that one because I don't have all the information to make a really solid decision on that. But it is my belief that Paradise Irrigation District should be Paradise until the last viable minute. I agree with the water, selling the water. Where else or what other company gets their assets refilled while we're in the meeting? But you got to do whatever you got to do to stay afloat. And if that means selling water, by all means, but there's got to be some kind of control over it to ensure that we have enough water on the ridge to handle the situation that we have up here and the growth. I'm in real estate. I've kind of got an advantage on watching what's going on here, who's buying land, who's building, and things like that. And I see a recovery, a very positive recovery, more than I think the average person sees. So the long-term plans on how are we going to make sure that we have the assets we need, it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when we are back to a viable community. By all means, I'm in agreement that we never sell the rights. Never, it just doesn't make sense. In the long run, it's just going to blow up in our faces. Does that help answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah.
That was probably one of my first questions I asked Kevin is obviously we lost thousands of customers. How do we replace them? And this water sale, is a real positive aspect. And I said, but will my grandson have water?
Exactly.
Can we turn that valve off?
The real estate is the same thing. I'm working for 10% right now because everything that I was selling is gone, and I went from selling beautiful homes to land. How am I making that work? You just got to do what you got to do without compromising your morals and your long-term goal, your plan.
So I know you kind of touched on the time thing. I know that you do give back to the community. I know that you're involved with the Gold Nugget Museum. I think
I'm actually the secretary of the board of directors for the Gold Nugget Museum.
Okay, and the realtor. Are there anything else that you're involved in, Rotary or?
Well, actually, it's funny you should mention that. I'm going to Rotary tomorrow for my first visit.
Oh, okay.
Or as part of that, but yes. So I'm not a very very good person at being what's the word I'm looking for? Sedimentary or whatever. I have to go. I have to do things. We raised our kids. The kids went away. We filled it with. I was on the board of directors for the Chico Concourse de Elegance. Filled it with that. We filled it with other things. I just like to keep moving, and so I have the time now. It's time to give back. Like I said, it's the first day that they lifted up the whatever you call it, the blockade, whatever. So I live on Wayland. So when they opened up the county part, I came home. I've been here ever since. So I got up to the police and they said, "Oh, your address is on Wayland. Okay, good, you can go." Which was technically I'm on the other side and in the town, and I wasn't supposed to be back. but doing whatever I could do, I'm a pay it forward sort of guy, you need a hand, we're going to give you a hand, and hopefully you're going to give it to somebody else, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I'm trying to do here. It's just someday somebody's going to I'm going to need something. Hopefully they're going to be able to come in and fill it in for me. And
All right.
Very good. Bill?
You were in law enforcement in the Marines?
in the Air Force.
Air Force?
Yeah, Air Force.
Got that one. How did you like that, Jim?
I loved it. I mean, it's just one of those thinking on your feet as you go, but having a good solid set of regulations and laws behind you to help make sure that you're making the right decisions. So, yeah, I loved it. I had a back injury. Is the only reason why I left it. So, but I went, like I said, into recruiting, which was as much and fun as doing the Air Force job. So. Very good.
The business had the $24 million budget. What was that?
Yeah, so that was a residential care facility for the elderly. So it's the Terraces Senior Living in Chico. And during my tenure there, we opened up the new building, and most of my responsibility was pre-selling that place, and we actually set some records. We had that pre-sold up to 70% before the doors ever opened up. Got it up to licensing, got it passed through licensing, and that was my commitment to the company. I told them that once we get to that point, I got to go. It's that is, you think you do a lot of work anywhere else? Run a 24-hour a day facility with 60 plus employees. There is no sleeping time. The phone's ringing all night long and everything. And
Did you have a board to report to?
So I ran this site. We did have corporate headquarters that I reported to.
It was a corporation, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a board. Okay. You said you were firm in your beliefs. Do you want to share any of your beliefs?
Well, it's just when Dan knows me. I've been friends with Dan for a long time. When I get something set in my mind, I go. I mean, it's just it could be anything. This put a project in front of me, and I'm going to get it done. Until it's done. I'm not a procrastinator. I want to get it done, and so I get in there and like the other gentleman was saying, I love to do the research. I love to make sure that I'm doing the things right before I start. And if I'm sure that I'm right, I'm sure that I'm right. Let's put it that way. So if I ever say you want to bet, don't bet me. Because I probably got something in my pocket that says I'm right.
All right, thank you. Kind of to follow up on that a little bit, you said you can be swayed if you had information before you. Okay, what if you had information and your opinion was different, quite different, let's say, than the rest of the board? How would you try to sway the board, or how would you handle that if you had all the information and you felt strongly about something? And
Okay, so like I said, though, that's why there's a board, right? And so the right decision or the best decision could be made. So maybe I just have to back off. And I've done that. You just kind of have to sometimes when it's for the best of the community or the facility. It's the same thing at the Gold Nugget Museum. We're trying to discuss this and this. You said, no, I don't want to do that, or but the truth of the matter is, you got to compromise sometimes.
okay, very good, perfect, thank you. Any other questions?
I'm good.
Cool. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
Not right at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll get right into the discussion and nominations.
When we opened up this vacancy, I thought we're going to have a hard time getting good candidates. Now we're going to have a hard time making up our mind.
That's right. That's
What'd you
right.
say? You want to talk?
Is there public comment on this?
Yes. Is there? Do we have?
I believe every agenda item.
Oh, okay, sure. Sorry, Ward.
Just as a refresher, we have had an issue over several years, just reminding myself of Directors Hall, Hunt, and Duncan, who have had addresses to receive mail and qualified for their division, even though they didn't live there. The complication with this is, and the fear goes back to why in 1916, when the assessment district was found, there were huge agricultural concerns in town. The fear going forward is that at some point, all 5 directors, once we get rid of the need to have divisions, would come from Division 1 and would void the progress that is being made with our last and only operating orchard, which is an agricultural rate. I know many times, having heard from Council Cooper, that the state makes it very difficult to get rid of divisions, but it's much easier to find qualified people if the entire town were able to do that. But it remains with this one fear: as long as we have the agricultural concern and we have one continuing agricultural concern in town, it would be possible, if we got rid of all the divisions, to have all 5 people living on the same street in Division 1 saying, I'll run for that, and somebody puts enough money in the pot that they all get voted in, it would be a problem in this town. The opposite, however, is that when we have the divisions, the people, by the way, that's what's in the top box of the organizational chart, expects our directors to come from the division where they are. The controversy that we had with Hall and with Duncan and with Hunt was they did have an address and they got mail. That qualified them, although they did not live in the division that they represented. Granted, all 5 directors represent the entire town. But from the people's perspective, we think that if you're in division such and such, you live in division such and such, you actually live there. It's not just where you get your mail. Like I do. I have a vacant lot in Division 1. I do receive my mail there. We also have the concern that in previous considerations with large turnover on the board and previous discussions and interviews that were done, when there were multiple candidates, what happened to the one that was not accepted? And in a previous one, it was almost a very clear tie between Prevost and Brown. And I think Director Wentland made that clear. But during the course of interviews, it was just a slight difference. So from the people's perspective, considering how well he qualified then, from the people's perspective, we would believe that Brown would be your best candidate to fill Division 5 at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward. Okay. Anyone else? Well, this is the candidates. Okay. Georgiana's nice enough to get this little cheat sheet here, so we can accept nominations now.
Not yet.
That was for.
Well, that's for the vice president.
So if you
Oh,
look
that
on
is
your-
Vice President. I'm sorry.
If you look on your screen, there's a
Okay.
recommended form of motion that
Oh,
anybody
okay.
It's on
can
page
make at
4.
this point.
I got the wrong cheat sheet.
You do.
Okay.
Page 4.
Right. No, I see it. Okay. So, right. Okay. So someone make a motion to nominate someone.
Correct.
I'll nominate Lee Brown.
Okay. Anyone else? Do we have a second? Yeah.
There's no second. It dies for lack of a second. Then there can be a second motion made.
Okay. Okay. Do we have another?
So you dies. So if you want to announce that it dies.
Okay. Apparently there isn't a second. So
For lack of a second.
Thank you.
yeah.
I move to appoint Greg Mowers to fill the Division 5 vacancy of the Board of Directors on the Paradise Irrigation District until the next general election in November of 2020, and thereafter the person elected to fill the vacancy assumes office in December 2020.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Majority has it, I'll say no.
So
Okay.
4-1.
4-1. Motion passes.
3 to
3-1. Excuse me. 3-1. Yeah. 3-1. Motion passes.
Greg would have voted for it. Okay.
I think that's it.
This is out of the frying pan into the fire.
At this time, I'd like to.
You are now Yep, come on around.
Mr. Mauer.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Tim. Very much. Appreciate it.
Take a seat and you become a voting member.
Mr. Mauer, if I can have you raise your right hand and just read the statement.
Classes first.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee.
Well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Careful what you wish for.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, I was really impressed with you.
I bought a tractor from you once.
You did?
What, a Ford 4000?
Oh, okay.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
I was going to see if anybody's interested in taking a 5-minute break. Or is anyone interested in that?
I am.
Support that
Okay,
plan.
why don't we adjourn for go say 10 minutes? How about that? Thank you. We'll return at 7. What's that?
I like this. I can sit down and take a break.
So looks like we're at item number 3, approval of consent calendar. Any questions on the consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Anyone?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. 5-0.
And we could do math.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay. Now we'll go to item number 5. Oh, excuse me.
You've got Ward.
Have Ward.
Ward. Excuse
Ward
me,
made a
Ward.
special trip today.
That's right. Number 4? Yes. Oh, yes. Anything that you'd like to comment on that's not on the agenda this evening?
Where are you going, Ward?
Yeah, I think I can do that. Good evening, Board.
Portugal?
Yes, a few things. And you saw it in the previous minutes. Then that was information about what we were planning in the way of a building out here as part of the demonstration of what defensible space is. So I have the artist rendering here with comments that we've received so far from the Butte County Fire Safe Council and some others. So I need these back, but let's just run this down here and you get an idea what we're looking at. Roughly a building
I'm excited to see this.
model that's 12 feet long, 4 feet wide. It's got roof slope to it. It's got siding on it. It's got a window. And people can walk up to it and with the signage understand what is a building that has defensible space. So a plant that is wrong planted next to it and signage saying don't plant these within 5 feet of your building. Other plants that are, these are okay but should be further from your, et cetera, et cetera. For instance, at the window, if you were in the house, the sign on the window, if you were looking through it, do you see defensible space when you're inside your house looking out?
Right.
So that kind of an educational thing, just as if we have the planted area with signage explaining to people why this is what works in Paradise. It's drought tolerant, it attracts pollinators, it's fire resistant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the signage makes it an educational element without somebody from PID or the garden club or some docent saying, let's go take a tour. Now, we may do that in the future with school children, but right now it's basically what we're looking at, how this property then can provide to our community this educational element of what defensible space looks like from this kind of a building. For instance, the roof slope. The key thing is we are not allowing in this town anymore a 3 and 12 roof slope. 4 and 12 is now the minimum. The fire department would like to see 5 and 12 as the minimum because the steeper the slope, the less chance of accumulating debris on it. Of course, we're not going to have pine needles anymore, are we?
Very good.
Anyway, that's an option with that. Oh, by the way, if you hadn't heard already, Ed Fortner sold his property for $40,000.
I don't know.
His neighbors think it was worth a whole lot more. That's what he wanted. He sold it for $40,000. So
Thanks for that tidbit, Ward.
I I happen to know the guy that bought it. He's very happy with who the neighbors are, so there you go. I wanted to include this, though, about that. I have a break in my paragraph here. Habitat for Humanity, who has had various managers over the years who are helping to build houses right now on 20th, basically across the street from the brewery there. And if you followed the progress there, they have had several different people from a variety of construction trades helping future homeowners learn how to build a house and participate in that. Most of it is still done by the people that are actually licensed contractors and their subcontractors. However, there are a couple of them that are interested in this project and this building from the standpoint of whether or not Habitat for Humanity could contribute some building materials that are not used on some of their projects and provided here. Now, that would probably be acceptable for some parts of it, but for not all of the parts of it that we would call part of the demonstration of what is a fire-resistant building material. However, they are doing that in compliance with current Chico codes, which actually now are different than Paradise codes, but probably going to be changed as well. But there is some interest from those people as well, and I'll be following up with that when I get back from vacation. So besides all of that, we still have the concern that this needs to be one of the places that is an attractive property come spring. So a good portion of the daffodils that have already been ordered by the Paradise Garden Club will get planted here someplace. Now, we had already put 1,000 in front of where the rock wall is, next to the sidewalk up there, 5 years ago. Well, with a few things that have gone on, there isn't much left there. There are a few there, but not much. So that and the right across from the parking lot from there are two candidates for planting. We have 3 other spots in town where the town of Paradise has suggested, could we renew the planting here, and 2 within Park and Recs at Billy Park and Aquatic Park. So we're considering that. But of the 3,500 bulbs that we have ordered, we only have about 1,500 committed at this standpoint. So since we're not going to be contributing any to Feather River Hospital at the 2 locations we do daffodils there, we have the option of finding other places. So I don't think I'd want to plant some up at the lake, even though that's PID property, but my suggestion, and so far the garden club's going along with mine, is that if we're doing anything on behalf of PID, they'd be out here where the demonstration goes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward.
Thanks, Ward.
Ward, if you were to approach, say, a local contractor, just say Trilogy Construction, that maybe they might show interest in building that as a demonstration, but be able to put their sign on it as advertisement as well, is that something you would entertain?
We talked about it at church, and they're very aware of what our plans are. Dan talked to them over a year ago, Dan Wentland did, and they said, we would probably have some materials, we'd probably have some people who'd be willing to help you. They were working together on that. I don't know what their status is right now.
Yeah, I would just throw out a name. I didn't necessarily mean Sean, but I mean, if we were to find a contractor that was willing to contribute, would you be opposed to them having signage on it? I
think that's something we'd need to look into.
Is that a
PID property? Yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe say like donated by.
I think we could look into something, but straight up advertisement is probably not.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's all I meant was donated by.
The other question I have is this a building that people are going to be able to enter, or is it just the model of the outside?
You didn't get the picture yet?
I did.
We did.
Okay, so the back of that is open,
Okay.
and the people who have been working at the garden, especially Chuck and Phyllis? Is it
Phyllis, yeah.
Yeah. Think that we need like a coat closet back there for tools for people that are working there with a lot that's available to them. So otherwise, the back of it is just an open space, so you can get into it and see, oh, okay, yes. If I'm looking out this
Through the
window,
window, that was
question
your-
is,
that's
yeah.
maybe
But
what-
otherwise, the only thing on the back is a cabinet that can be locked with a rake and a few other things in it. What we had done, and Dan, what we had done before with the development of the garden was for all of the different groups that contributed something, Master Gardeners, I forget them all, but we want to acknowledge them both at the ribbon cutting and in print, but we don't have like signage on something
Okay.
that says.
I was just curious if that'd be an incentive to get somebody involved with it that wants to get their name out there.
It's nice to see that. I appreciate you bringing the diagram
Yeah.
because I'm
That's
very
a-
visual.
it's
So
an amazing
exciting
idea.
to- I love the idea. So
Yeah, thanks.
great.
Okay, very good. Okay, now we can go to item 5.
Oh, yeah.
PID staff and facility report updates. Kevin.
Just to kind of go back, there's a few things on my staff report that I'm going to mention that kind of have popped up since I've written it. And one of them is the garden itself. USDA was here today. They said that they have some, I believe they've been talking to you, that there's some funding available for demonstration gardens like this. So this could be something that we could look in USDA funds for. And then they did talk about that tree and being able to maybe take down that tree in that process. So we're trying to finagle in some funding available for that tree removal, but also for maybe some additional garden information on that. So
We're working on it, one step forward.
buy a bloom, yeah, we did. Director Knoll donated some money to buy a bloom. Yeah, to the demonstration garden.
Well, because I know that I heard the garden club's going to be sending a check, I just don't send yet,
Oh.
so I don't know who did or if they have yet.
I have not.
I think they've gotten a few more donations, but I don't know, who the donations were from.
So on to the staff report, spillway investigation. We are still working with the Division of Safety of Dams on the spillway investigation. We went over and had a conference call with them, and then Gentera, our dam engineer, put together a phase 1 response back to them on what the solution, the interim solution was to the investigation on the dam. The spillway was downgraded to poor, and so one of the thoughts is that it's a retaining wall on the left-hand side as you're looking up the spillway into the reservoir. The retaining wall on that side is not stable according to their investigation, and the thought was to put a gabion wall.
We actually tore in behind that when we were putting the bypass in. George wanted to check it, and it turned out they could still see the moisture inside there, and then we were told to close it back up and don't fool with it again.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's
So.
probably why it's disabled.
Well, and the wall thickness is not up to standard, and I don't believe there's any
Probably
rebar in
the
it
rebar,
also.
yeah.
So the thought was to put a gabion wall, which I didn't know what a gabion wall was, but now I do, which is a thing of rocks in a metal cage, and put that in there. But DSOD basically, they are trying to work with us, and they are working with us, and that might be kind of into next year of doing that as a fix, and that we might just do increased monitoring for this year. So we're going to probably do some debris removal from the spillway channel, which the spillway comes out, shoots right at the treatment plant, then makes a direct turn, goes along the toe of the dam, and then makes a left turn down Little Butte Creek. So what we're going to do is probably clear some of that debris in that channel and make sure that there's nothing that's going to back up into the toe of the dam to secure the dam for the current flood or the current winter season. And then if there is something going on, we will be continuously monitoring it for them. So that's where we're at right now. They've actually been really great to work with, even though they've been kind of given this task of going forward. We are putting in a hazard mitigation grant for what we call we're going to do a high hazard study of the dam itself that to show what would happen if the dam broke, and the critical infrastructure that would be kind of tore up from that dam breaking, and then also the inundation of lower level individuals and who would be inundated with the water when it broke. And then we're actually putting in a hazard mitigation grant to actually repair the dam. So
Who's doing the water induction plant? Where it would go?
we have not hired anybody on that because we're still waiting for our sub-application to be approved. So we have an inundation study that's already been created that we'd probably work off of, that we hired, I believe, as Thomas & Associates. I'd have to go back and look at who did it, but we probably would maybe rehire them to do it, but also look at the stability of the dam from a kind of what kind of flood would actually take out the dam.
I'm just curious.
Magalia?
Magalia Dam.
Yeah, it's been rated as one of the worst dams in the state for safety. And in the past, we haven't been able to do any repairs.
Just curious, with the spillway incident, CAL FIRE did those maps and those projections. Just curious if that might be someone to partner with.
The recent inundation study maps were submitted to Cal OES and then also to the Division of Safety of Dams. I believe that they both, so now you have to do an inundation study every 5 years. And so we just did one on that we probably would then partner off of, and we can look at Cal FIRE and see what they have. But we would probably work off of that backwards and then look at the damage associated with what would happen on a high hazard flood. And then based on that phase 1, we would then do phase 2, which we're hoping would be a full dam replacement. And we have a pretty tight timeline on that, trying to get that accomplished. But we think we can get it done. And the cost figures weren't extraordinary. They were about $10 million to do a new dam. So, yeah. So we have a $12 million hazard mitigation sub-application on that one.
Great.
Yep.
That's actually about the price it was quoted before it started inflating. I don't know what inflated it. We started out around 10 million, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what was before that, but that's where we're at right now. So, recovery operation update. We're continuing to do multiple tasks up there at the yard. Our biggest ones are the sampling of standing homes, the interim water, which the interim water is outpacing us, so we are continuing to bring on forces and make that our priority. We know that's one of the big issues that people want. We continue to get about 10 a day. We thought we were going to get this big influx. We had about 400, and we were really trying to knock that down, so we had about 200 that we were chasing, and then it went to 600 that were signed up, and then we went to 400, and now it's at 800, and so we're continuing to chase. We're trying to keep up and give people timelines that are reasonable timelines, but also achievable timelines. So right now we're about 6 weeks out from a person coming into the office to getting that installed. We have 4 of the Alliance for Workforce Development individuals starting today, and an additional 5 we're hoping to get on board next week. And those are going to be just pushed out to do interim water and trained to do interim water supply.
Is that the backflow devices?
Yep. Yeah. We just have a huge influx of people that are looking for that on their property. The other thing, too, is flow tests. We're keeping up with the flow tests for people that are trying to rebuild. And so the flow test needs to go to their sprinkler developer for their indoor sprinklers, and we're keeping up with that. And service line replacement for new constructions. We've replaced over 50 service lines within the town. There's only been 3 CFOs in town, but we have replaced over 50, waiting for those people to come to actually get the CFO. So they're not waiting on us. They're going to be waiting on some other issue with their CFO. So we've been out there cranking that out. We had a kickoff or a pre-bid meeting today with contractors for the RFP that went out for service line replacement for those 650 service lines that you guys approved the RFP last board meeting. And we had, I believe, 7 contractors show up for it. And so Sammy and Waterworks was very happy with the response. And a lot of them are local, too. So that means that they're going to be hiring local individuals that help with the housing and that type of thing, too. So good response coming forward, and I think we'll get some good bids coming forward. It closes October 17th. We're hoping to get these people on as quickly as possible, so expect a special board meeting after we clear all of the RFPs and come with a recommended selection. So we're working quickly on getting that accomplished. The other thing, too, is we've had an influx of leaks. So now that debris removal is gone, I think some of these leaks are surfacing that we're now seeing. And so we're going out and trying to keep up with the leaks. And some of them have been pretty good-sized blowouts where they normally blow out on Friday nights or Saturday morning. So we've had quite a bit of individuals up here working on the weekends and digging in the streets and trying to get the leaks stopped. If you see leaks out there, we're wanting them to be reported, but a lot of them we're not going out and immediately repairing. only because it's not a huge priority for us. And some of the leaks that aren't tearing things up are actually helping us.
Flow is good.
Yes, flow is good. So we're seeing that. We're still producing about 4 million gallons at the treatment plant, which winter flows are at 2. So we know we have a lot of leaks out there. We were thinking about bringing forward a leak detection service coming into town. But with the tree removal coming, we just think that we might just be doing it one time and we'll be right back out there to do it again. So at this point, we're just going to kind of roll with it and just continue to produce water, which is not hurting us. It's actually helping us in some ways, and then probably bring the leak detection in afterwards. We did walk. B-Res is one of our tanks that's down. It's creating some treatment plant issues because they're not able to monitor the water or they're having to react to water fluctuations in a more timely manner instead of having the storage out there to buffer some of the demand. So we have submitted insurance to our insurance for replacement of that. We want to upgrade that, so we're looking into the USDA to actually fund that because we feel like it's an easier road to go down to get USDA funding than to go down some of these other roads. And so we had a kickoff meeting today here with USDA, and then we walked the B-Res with USDA forces today. And so they're going to look at trying to get some funds quickly into the district for that, and then maybe some emergency funds. When we first talked to USDA, they thought they were going to bring about $90 million into the California for disaster-related funds, and that's kind of went bye-bye. So we're now working on a smaller pool of money. So we're going to probably look out. Whatever USDA can't kick in, we're probably going to look other places for some funding for that replacement.
Are you going to repair it or replace it?
We're going to replace it. We want to replace it with either a steel tank or a concrete tank. And so what we're looking at is we're going to kind of back into a project based on the funding that we can find. So what we're looking at is the insurance proceeds. We submitted about $3 million for it. And then we're looking to augment that with about $4.5 million from USDA or some other funding opportunity to get us to about $7.5 million. And then that way we can then put in probably a steel tank at that point. So.
What did they say was the match for Paradise when you met with them?
Well, they said if it met a health and safety concern, we could get 75-25.
That's great.
Yeah. And we feel like we can make that argument that it is a health and safety concern because of right now, we're not able to actually meet water standards coming out of the treatment plant. That the distribution line from the treatment plant into town is where we're having our contact time with our chlorine to meet the water standards at that point. So what is required, and DDW has been working with us, is that the water standard is met out at the treatment plant when it leaves the treatment plant. So we're going to argue that the health and safety concern is that it's not meeting that, and that we need that B-Res to be able to fluctuate that water. So, and I think it sounded like it would fly with them. So, yep. Right, and a floating cover is not a recommended replacement. They're not recommended, but they're not outlawed. So that makes it if it was a code and standards that DDW would not allow a floating cover to go back in, it'd be a quick and easy FEMA fix. But because they're allowed, we have to go through FEMA and we have to go through a BCA calculation, which is never easy. Yeah, and it takes a long time. We want to get this thing fixed. We want to get the design done this fall, go to bid or go out to bid in winter and start in the spring on construction. So we have a really quick time frame on it.
Waterworks make a design on that?
Yep. They're having to change it a little bit because it was a 2-tank design.
Yeah.
And so we're going to pull that second tank off and we're going to just have the 1 tank. But yeah, the design is almost 100% done. We're taking it back a little bit so it meets the criterias of the grant funding, of what we need from the grant
Did
funding.
all the soil tests to make sure there wasn't rocks and so forth in
They're
there?
going to do another drilling in the middle. Now that the tank is destroyed and it's dry, they're going to just core drill right in the middle to make sure that there's no rocks under there. Because before they kind of did kind of a survey study, this way they're just going to be able to drill straight down and see.
You know, I was told when I first got on the board that there was 25 feet from the pipeline down there underneath that went up to that tank, straight up, so, and that's the main line. So hopefully they won't hit that.
No, they're actually going to do a little bit of repiping. The inlet and outlet pipes will be repiped during the construction time of it, so there'll be some retooling of the underground. Our mutual aid staff has kind of dried up in a way, just because we used them for quite a bit and it kind of just dries up. So we're augmenting that with our current new employees that have been on board for about almost a month and a half, and they've been trial by fire, and they've taken it and they've ran with it. They're doing great. They're picking things up quickly, and so now they're becoming the trainers of the Alliance for Workforce Development people that are coming out. So we're teaming up people with the labor coming from Alliance for Workforce Development and our own individuals, and kind of making teams out of them to go out and accomplish some of these tasks. So we're really kind of we're ebbing and flowing, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. The one thing that we're running into on the sampling side of things is that we can go out and take 100 samples today, but the lab can only process them so quickly. So what we're doing is we're kind of backing into that workforce or that development of how quickly they can get through those samples, and that's the speed that we're going on sampling of those individual properties. Long-term intertie with Chico. So the board approved the memorandum of understanding, which was a quarter share of the feasibility study that was going to be done by Butte County. The Board of Supervisors did hear it. There was quite a bit of comment on it. I wasn't able to make it to the Board of Supervisors meeting to give PID's side, but I think Paul did a really good job of giving an understanding of where it is, and that it is just a feasibility study. It's a high level look at the process and if it can make sense for all parties associated with it. The board did approve it the Board of Supervisors did approve it on a 4-to-1 vote.
Are you aware the new water district is inside the Vina? It just was out this week.
Yep. Western. No, it's not Western. Butte. No, it's not Butte. I forget. Yeah, I do know about it though. Yeah.
They're all on wells and they're around Chico.
Yep.
And everything.
Yeah.
I think they might be a potential customer.
They could be. So Paul has given notice to West Yost, the engineering firm that's going to do it, to move forward, and we're going to have a kickoff meeting next week down at Cal Water Chico to start the process. Just for board edification, we are not giving up our water rights to make this process work, and that the reason why this process is in such a positive effect for PID is because it gives the PID the ability to control its own fate. So it gives that ability to sell the water, but also to keep control of that water going forward. The state, from the initial onset of the disaster and knowing our financial concern, the state was very interested in looking at basically dissolving the district or merging the district with another local water district. That would mean that PID would lose control of its water rights and of its water rates. The only water districts that are close by are private water districts, so Delaware and Cal Water. And so this gives us the opportunity to control our own fate. The contract would be between us and the county, and with the number one priority would be that the water would be for first PID customers, second would be for outside sales, and with the opportunity to bring additional water into our watershed that is would be the county's water to offset any additional needs down into the valley. So that's the initial plan. Right now, we're at the feasibility study of the plan to even look if it is a possibility. So if it's not a possibility, we're going to look other places for other opportunities to have business opportunities. And we're talking with PG&E about their power plant. We're talking about PG&E about their Miocene Canal water. So we're continuously working forward to find other business opportunities. So we have gotten the letter from the legislative budget request, the 14 million, 7.3 the first. We've sent the letter back to them that we are agreeing to the feasibility study that they've asked us. Destin feels very confident in that there's going to be a somewhat of control, that we have control over how the study is kind of conducted, and that our voice is heard through that study. And so, but we're still waiting for the funds to be wired to our account. Should be any day.
You keep saying that.
I keep checking the bank account.
Checks in the mail.
Ross is the money there.
Back in
Ross.
the state, right?
Yeah. I have confidence that it'll be there. FEMA Cal OES, last month we worked very diligently with FEMA to come up with to get our damage description for our service line replacement process, with kind of guidelines on that. And I feel like the district had a lot of wins in that conversation. We have been very diligent in our numbers that we are showing them, and that what we consider damage to the lines. So when we originally started the conversation, a damaged service line was a service line with a detect of a regulated contaminant over the MCL. And that was their stringent look at it. And we argued that should not be the standard. That's the drinking water standard. We were looking at a damage standard. And we've been able to convince FEMA that the damage standard based on pre-fire conditions is that any service line with a detect of a fire-related VOC should be considered damaged, because those fire-related VOCs were not there before the fire. And FEMA's guidelines state that they are there to get infrastructure back to pre-fire conditions. And so we've made the arguments, and they finally bought off on it. So that opens up our numbers tremendously over the MCL. So we've had a lot of victories. We're now going out and doing a little more testing on that. So you're going to see some more burnt lot testing. It's because I gave you this here, which is our recovery plan that was on Monday's meeting. We've cleared over 120 miles of main line, but we still have 50 miles of main line that we need to clear. Those 50 miles of main line are smaller diameter dead-end services that a lot of them don't have standing homes on them, so a lot of damage on that. We're assuming there's going to be more detects in those particular areas.
Trying to back up our statistics, is that what you're saying?
Yep. So we're going to look at it more of a global view of the system. And we got to so a lot of those don't even have water in them, because we never even filled them because there was no need for that. So we're starting to fill those lines, and we're going to start testing more of those small diameter dead-end services or main lines, and we're going to get some more service samples off of those too. Some more leaks. Yeah. Some more leaks. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to be kind of going forward to kind of develop this argument to FEMA and to build our case for
How
this.
far do you think we have to take that, to satisfy them?
Not very far.
Okay.
Yep. No.
So, excuse my ignorance here, but how about the damage created by FEMA? I mean, they're
From the-
obviously helping with create leaks issues, and I mean, I can show you one spot right in front of the house that I lost. I had a house on Valley View where the trucks just mushed, literally mashed it into the ground, and
Yeah.
Actually, Cal OES.
Callaway, yes, yeah. I'm sorry.
We are putting claims in for debris removal damage. And so one of the things that we have looked at is the district owns 30 roads in the town, over 5 miles of road. And we have looked at those roads from a fire-related damage, which we haven't seen much fire-related damage to the roads, but 26 of the 30 roads have been declared damaged due to debris removal. So we're putting claims in for the damage for those roads, but any of those leaks that are created through that debris removal, we are putting those as claims from emergency repair, basically, from the emergency of debris removal. So all of that damage, when we go out and repair it, is being tracked and then will be claimed through the FEMA process. Okay. We have submitted our application for the $3.5 million of the community disaster loan. We've submitted our claim for $3.5 million of business interruption through the insurance process. We are in the process of submitting our claim for damage to all the meters in the town, which the insurance has agreed to cover, which also would include the AMI system also in that. So next board meeting, what you'll see is we are going to create a meter standard. So a meter standard with an AMI standard with a backflow standard. So you'll see that next board meeting going forward, and then we'll start dropping meters into individual properties that have, once we get the standard in place, we'll go out and order the meters, and we'll start metering individual properties that have potable water. So, and then the other thing on the on Monday's meeting was that we have issued over close to 400 letters of potability to standing structures. So those include tests that have come back clean, main lines clean, and we went through the review process, or tests came back detect for a fire-related VOC over the MCL, replace the service line, no more testing, letter of potability. And always, if everybody wants, and hopefully you are, can look at our website, and we have maps that are updated on a weekly basis, probably a couple times a week. Letters of potability. Here's the sample map of who's received them, and we're hoping that these will go from we're estimating about 35 to 50 a week that we're looking at issuing, and based on that number, based on 35, here is our time frame for clearing all standing structures in the district by March of next year. We're hoping to beat that, but that's where we're at. The other thing, too, is you'll see a lot more lines around town. We are now hosing over almost everybody when it comes to sampling. We're no longer asking people to stagnate unless they volunteer, but we're not looking for any more volunteers. We're just going to go through and start hosing everybody over, because it doesn't require any customer contact other than we knock on the door and say your water's going to be out for maybe 30 minutes. They don't see any difference, and we're still able to go out there, stagnate their water, and then pull a sample on that after 72 hours. Dr. Gina Solomon also was there at Monday's meeting, and I gave you her presentation, PowerPoint presentation. She is a medical doctor from UC San Francisco who was able to receive a $250,000 grant to come in and help individual homeowners sample their home. So she was looking for volunteers on that night, and I believe she got 60 that night to sign up, and then I believe we've had another influx of individuals. So I don't think from the PID standpoint we're going to have a tremendous amount of problem getting her 100. She was going to do 120 in the PID location. We also have received a grant way back when from the North Valley Community Foundation to help offset in-home testing that we are looking to give to her to open up even more slots for individuals to get in-home testing. So that's an additional $25,000 that we're looking to push to her to help individuals test their home. Okay. And here's the presentation if anybody wants to read it. And then there's a flyer on your desk too for how to sign up, and then gives the time frame on when she's going to come back. So she's going to do phase 1 starting now through November. We're hoping to coordinate with her on our next community meeting that she'll give phase 1 results, and then phase 2 will be a more extensive research inside the individual's home if they have some type of detect. So she's going to go in there, do air monitoring, look at multiple other sample sites, and then leave a carbon filter on its sink, and then analyze the carbon in the filter after a couple weeks of usage. So pretty impressive, I thought, and I think it'll be a great benefit to our customers.
I thought she was really well received by the crowd.
I thought so too. Yes.
Quick question, Kevin. I know there was a survey done early on of how many people were actually back in their standing structures. Is there any chance that that data is still being collected as people are, that PID is collecting it?
We have not been collecting it internally. That was a survey done by Team Rubicon in coordination with us and Cal OES, but we have not been updating that data at this point in time. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Long-term capital projects, just so everybody is still on, knows that we have these outstanding projects. Water rights we have 3 water rights. One's a pre-14 water right, which pre-14 in water terms means that they're not controlled by the Division of Drinking Water. They're the strongest you can find in California. Not ours, but pre-14 ones are. We have 2 permits. One of our permits is the oldest permit in the state of California, and that is for the reservoir storage. It's a storage permit. Both are storage permits. One permit we feel like we've used to the extent where we now want to go to license, which means we've used all the permit storage amount, and now we want to make it permanent, is what it is. The other permit we want to extend because we haven't used any of it. So it's that permit outstanding. That permit would then allow us to raise some of our reservoirs, either Paradise or Magalia, which we want to do probably with Magalia, is to use that permit to raise Magalia. So we are in the process of renewing that permit and then going to license on our water rights. We were in the process before the fire. We're going to continue doing that. The one thing that we are going to change after or post-fire is what we call the place of use. So they tell you where you can use your water. We're going to expand that place of use so that if we do an intertype project, we have the ability to use that water down there. Or if we want to sell our water down to a raw water user for 1 year, that we have the ability to do that. So we're going to change the place of use on those permits. Magalia Dam, we've talked about that. Replacement at BRES. The nice thing on that one is that we're still working through a hazard mitigation grant on the second tank. So remember, it was a 2-tank project. We scaled it back to 1 tank for the USDA and for the insurance proceeds, and then we put in a hazard mitigation grant for the second tank so that we can maybe get a second tank through grant funding also. And then the design work, the design was funded through an SRF loan that turned into an SRF grant, that they have extended that ability to actually use those design funds through December 31st. So as Sammy's working through a redesign to make it work, we can actually apply to get more those additional funds through this SRF grant to reimburse us for the design on his. So we're trying to use all the funds we possibly can. Mainline replacement, I know that's been brought up, and we are looking at doing mainline replacements. It might not be the ones that we exactly want to do today, but sometimes and it just happened a month ago, a person goes to dig footings for their house and finds our main line. We had no idea that our main line was there, and they cannot dig their footings any further unless we move our main line. So those are projects that we are taking into consideration. We're trying to upsize that main line when we come back to and replace it, and we're working with the town that most of those main lines are small diameter main lines with no fire suppression on them. So we're working with the town to use hydrant funds to upsize that for fire protection. which means the hydrant fund pays half, and then we pay half, and we install it, and then we put hydrants along that new service, that new main line. So there's some benefits there. So we are doing mainline work. It just happens that we might just jump on one tomorrow if we discover it at this point. And then the A-Zone pipeline project and generator upgrade. This was a project that was in process before the fire, and it was connected with the Reservoir B project. So with the Reservoir B, there's hydraulic issues with it that because we gravity feed down into that reservoir, that there's not enough pressure to use the lower portion of that reservoir. So there's actually 1 million gallons in there that's unusable. So we were going to put in a bypass or a redundant pipeline from our one pipeline from the treatment plant to the B-Res. We were going to run a secondary pipeline around Skyway so that if that pipeline ever went down or needed to be replaced or needed to be cleaned, we had a secondary source of water into the district. With that, we were going to do a pump that created pressure into that storage facility so that we could use the additional storage with the new reservoir. And under that, we were going to put a new generator at the treatment plant. That was all done through a hazard mitigation grant through the spillway disaster. And just to let you know, that is still moving forward. So we're still working on that. So just because we've split out the B-Res to its own project doesn't mean we forgot about that one. The B-Res was never part of that hazard mitigation grant, so that's why we split it off to make it part of this hazard mitigation grant. So we're trying to use as much hazard mitigation funds as possible by splitting those projects. So it's still moving forward, just to let you know.
Is there a timeline on the generator upgrade for the treatment plant?
Not that I know of at this point. Right now, the generator there seems to be working fine. So it's not mission critical, but we do want to make sure that it gets in there, especially with the PG&E issues and all kinds of other stuff. So, yeah, so we're looking to do that, and I believe it. I don't think it meets air quality standards anymore either, because it's an old diesel one.
And is the new one going to be a different source of
It'll
fuel?
still be diesel, but it'll be a much cleaner running diesel, and I believe that it will last in a longer period of time without refills. I think after the fire, we were having to fill that thing up, I think, every other day, and that does create some logistic issues, especially if trucks can't get up here, which that's one of our concerns too, is ice storms, floods, tree falling, all kinds of different things being isolated out there. If we can't get fuel into that area, then we wouldn't be in a good position.
Kevin, is the town's First Street project underway? Is that, I see some work going on over there?
Yeah, so that's not the town's, that's PG&E.
That's PG&E.
So PG&E is undergrounding. That's a good point. PG&E is undergrounding all of the whole town, and so they started with that Almond Street.
Or Almond, excuse me.
Yeah,
Almond,
as their project because it was already in the pipeline anyway. We didn't go through there and replace it, and the town hasn't gone through and done any overlay or anything like that. I think they're another 2 to 3 years out on that project. So we would like to get in there and replace that pipe, but it's not the number one priority at this point. And we would look for maybe some grant funds to maybe go in there and replace it. But we're very, very close to getting Utiliquest on board to go out and start USA and all of those. Dustin's working through the contract issues, and so it's on the attorney side right now, and so I'm just staying out of their way. But we did meet with PG&E after our last board meeting, and so they accepted all of the easements that were granted for undergrounding, and they were good with the process going forward and adding the administration to that contract. So,
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay, great. Thank you for that report. Okay, now we'll go right to you again, Treasurer's report.
Public comment?
Oh, public comment, please, yes.
Thank you. Yes, I actually had several notes here that I've been making over time. I do think that the once-a-month community meetings continues to be a good idea, the turnout there. I also appreciate the fact that we have management, a board member, and the experts present. And you've got a real blessing in Sammy Cater. I mean, You know, to get an engineer with those qualifications that can speak plain English, you're very lucky with that. And he answers questions quite well, too. The second part about that, staff, I had the opportunity to introduce Jim Ladrini to Linda Biggs, who has been the pain in his side for quite some time. I was trying to get her to promise she'll quit pestering him. She didn't quite use those words, but they had a good handshake, and he said he appreciated her, and she said something to the effect that she'll try not to bug him so. But it was very helpful. And, of course, he's had others like that, too, because of who he is. He's very personable, but there are people that take up his time when I think, you know, maybe he's missing some opportunities to get some other work done. The water testing thing is still puzzling to some people, even those that have the filter, which frankly I think is spoiling the taste of Paradise water. Now, I have two in my A-zone neighborhood that I drink the water from their filter, and it has no taste at all. I drink the water in my A-zone out of my hose, and it tastes as good as Paradise water has ever tasted. It's excellent. I don't know how to talk people out of doing the filter. To me, it's stupid. It's like the little tiny thing that's full of carbon behind your refrigerator. That water is not as good as the tap water. I don't know how to get people to understand that. Our water is just fine.
Haven't tried Chico's water.
It is just fine. I attended another meeting where FEMA was talking about pre-fire conditions and bringing things back together, and I think you indicated they're going to try and do that with everything. The Lamalfa, anybody else go to the Lamalfa meeting? There was somebody there that brought this up too, but the FEMA people didn't commit to it there. It has come up in other conversations as well, and I know how you heard it. I've heard it too, but at that meeting with Lamalfa and the rest of the dignitaries there, they would not specifically commit that they're going to try and recreate the conditions to get us back to normal pre-fire. And I thought, okay, this is part of this controversy is who's got the right information about what. And now just a side note, you know, I follow the complaints that are going on between Cal OES and Cal Recycle here. The other day my neighbor says, would you get me another form? I have a new complaint. So I go down to the airport, I get another one, and I noticed right away that the sequential numbering at the top right of the form is not there anymore. So I said, oh, no more numbers? He says, yeah, we're not doing numbering anymore. I left it at that. Thank you for your time. That's the end of the comments I needed.
Thank you, Ward.
I have to go home and pack.
Have a great trip.
Yeah.
Great trip, Ward.
Yeah, I'll see you when I get back.
Be careful out
And I'll
there.
be sure to tell you how bad your water is.
Bring us souvenirs.
Thanks, Ward.
One last thing, and this is, I think it's an open invite to any board member that would like to go, is that we're doing a walkabout on Friday at 9 o'clock with the Fire Safe Council to go over all of the clearing that they've done for us on our land. Callie Jane, Kieran, they're doing it, and I believe, if you would like, 9 a.m., let's meet at Save More. There we go.
Save one.
Save More, M-O-R.
Save more.
That's in
Magalia.
It's in Magalia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Save more.
I don't know if you've driven up to Magalia recently, but that whole clearing that's on the hillside,
What is it, Lake Ridge Circle or Lake? Yeah.
that's ours.
That's PID property?
Mm-hmm. That whole side of that hill.
Hillside, yeah.
Almost all of it. It's a memo of understanding for a park and a botanical garden, and it's been in existence, 7 years. And other than buying a piece of property to give them access to it, nothing has happened.
Okay.
And we gave them forever memo of understanding. They just haven't had the funds to do anything. So that's one reason I question the lake. But since I had an opportunity to mention it, I would mention it.
So Emily brought up a good point. So only 2 board members, so that we're not having a
I'm not
serial board
available,
member.
so.
I'm not available either.
Nope.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
Hey, I'll do my first hour of.
There you go.
All right.
Oh,
Excellent.
go.
there you go. All right. Very good.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so now we can go to the treasurer's report.
Okay. Ross prepared, and I can answer. Right now, we're still clipping along. We did have a dip in cash, but we also had some pretty good outlay of cash, which was a lot of it was Sammy's contract. There is a delay of us getting that obligated through FEMA's process, but I don't see it being much further as a delay. So to get through FEMA's process, you have to have a project obligated, and then once that project's obligated, then the funds flow. So we are close to having that project obligated, and then as soon as it's obligated, those funds will be reimbursed and back into the district. We just wanted to make sure Sammy's project wasn't held up, or his payments weren't held up for that reason. So that really was the largest of the expenses. We are going to have some debt service payments coming up here shortly that we're going to pay, but we also expect $7.3 million being dropped into our bank account anytime soon. So that's right. Refresh. So, is there any questions on the treasurer's report?
No.
None.
I like the letter from Diane Feinstein. That's
Yeah, so
pretty
that
good.
was part of we had it, Diane Feinstein did come up and met with a group of us, including the county and with the town, with Cal OES and FEMA. So I was able to present PID's issue, and FEMA was very responsive to her saying, "This sounds like it's very simple. Are you taking care of it?" And they said yes. So I had her staff out before, and they toured. And so I think she was briefed on our situation, so she was very knowledgeable of the water situation and what we were trying to accomplish. So,
great.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
So you just need a motion.
Okay, yeah. Do we
I'll
have a
make
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, expense approval report. Any questions on the expense report?
I just had a question. If you flip back, Kevin, to page 27, just curious, of those, the 2.6, what percentage would you say are FEMA reimbursable expenses?
Of the 2.6 remaining,
Oh, sorry, yes.
the 2.6 remaining is going to be the 1.48 of Sammy's, the $1 million to Aptum, and the Arborist Firestorm.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
It's actually quite a lot of them.
Big chunk.
It's a chunk. Yeah, that's why I was just curious. Just, cash flow.
Yeah, and on the public assistance, we were able to. It's called CAT-Z, and they were telling us from the original that we would have to wait till basically close out to get those monies. We were able to argue that it should be available on a quarterly basis on whatever projects are obligated. So we're actually going to be able to get reimbursed as Aptum works through the contract. We'll be able to get reimbursed to pay them. So,
Nice.
yeah, that was a good win.
Yeah, the normal rules with FEMA don't really apply in an unprecedented event.
We're finding that pressure works.
Yeah, really. Any questions on the checks? Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to make a comment on the list. I asked for this list to be back, and it is in fully amount by date and amounts, or the amount of check money involved. I think that's a good list for us to be able to refer to. And from it, I gather that we're still buying boots. It says Boot Barn, $125. That was for one employee.
Yep, they get
Still
125.
buying safety boots for them.
Yep.
This is something that happened several years ago. Thought it was a good idea. I think George suggested it. And, but the district does buy boots for employee safety boots to make sure they have protection.
Correct.
And they're
nice.
MOU, right?
It is.
Food allowance.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, well, thank you. Do we have a motion for
I move to approve.
My second.
all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, Emily, legal report.
again, not much to report here. Kevin touched on the projects that our farm's working on, and I think you guys are pretty informed on our participation there. We do have some closed session items, and then we have some ongoing litigation, and I'm looking now, might be new to 3 of you actually, that I'll be able to report on next month, when we should have a little more information on the status.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
I have a question. Just looking for a page number. Basically, it's the Bay Delta, and I don't know why we're still spending money on that. We do really, I don't know why, what do we have to gain? We don't, right now, we're not selling any water that would be affected on the Delta plan that I'm aware of. How will it affect us?
Would you like an update?
Yeah.
I can ask Dustin. I think he's attending the meetings on behalf of PID and a number of other clients, and
Yeah, I know.
you're sharing the cost.
Yes, we're sharing the cost with 15 people are sharing the cost.
Right. So if you'd like an update on the status of those meetings.
Yeah, I just would like to know what PID is gaining by spending that money on attorney's fees. Bay Delta.
The $155. Sure.
Any other questions? Legal side? Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Okay. We can move on down to new business. How about that?
Okay. We had a discussion about this last board meeting, and was requested that it was on this current board meeting. And I think it's important that we are all on the same page before we move any further down, because we're going to get into an MOU and start developing an MOU with Parks and Rec, which is going to create legal time. And so that we're going to start spending some money to move this recreation from PID over to Parks and Rec, and then probably start working through some wants and asks and demands and all kinds of other things. So currently we operate recreation at Paradise Lake. Currently we are using a Alliance for Workforce Development individual up there who's doing an outstanding job, by the way. I was up there last week, and the grounds look great. He looks like he's doing a great job up there, pristine. But traditionally, we've done the recreation up there. We traditionally had somebody living up there for security and recreation purposes. That person has retired, and right now we have not backfilled that. After the fire, we had talked about that it might be an opportunity to look to give that recreation over to Parks and Rec. At the time, the board was interested in moving forward. Through the minutes, you can see trying to develop an MOU with them and to research that to see what that would look like. Parks and Rec is very interested in that. Dan would be here tonight to support that, but he has a board meeting himself, so they had to move their board meeting to tonight. So that's where he is. Traditionally, we've had about $45,000 of revenue, and the expense I put the minimum expense actually. That's one employee full time up there of about $90,000. That includes salary, benefits, and all of the other stuff that goes along with that, taxes. So it normally costs the district about $45,000 to have somebody up there for that purpose. It's a board decision. I'm here to take direction from the board. I think it's a good opportunity to support. It's a good opportunity for us to kind of give that over to the Parks and Rec, but I think it's a good opportunity for Parks and Rec to take it over and really run with it. Dan's already talked to me about grants that he's submitting to put trails up there for their recreation on our lands with our permission, and to continue the recreation up there in classes and take over the house up there to have classes for individuals. It truly is a pristine opportunity for somebody and to kind of make it a destination event, area to go up there. It's a hidden gem. It truly is.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. I drove up past the house. I don't know if anybody's driven up by the house. you can see, once you get up there, it's eerie how close that fire was, that the 25 yards away from that house, the bases of those trees are burnt. They're not damaged, but you can see how close that fire got.
Greg told me that story, so.
It's amazing, yeah. But the lake's in great shape, so. That's it. I'm here to take direction from the board and how we want to
I
go
have a
about this.
question.
Go ahead.
Where's security? Greg did a lot of work for security of the lake, and actually may have saved a couple of lives up there with the board we have in a little bee shed. And the security, I had a friend who lives up there, and he was saying that they're getting more people up there that have property on the side of the lake are getting more things where they're getting people come in and trespassing and so forth on their property. And this is where the cooperation between the landowners up there and Greg was working on security and trespassing. We've had this discussion, maybe it's been 2 years ago, but we decided that at that time that the additional expense should be charged to security. The 45,000 you're saying here, revenue 45, expense 90. In other words, it's not a fair thing. The 45,000 should be secure. Over the history of this, at one time there was proposals to fence in the lake for security. It's been a long time ago and it failed. Another time a fellow came and wanted to put in a park up there for water, playing and what have you. That failed. So it ended up being a compromise where we have the recreation and the security expense put together to put one employee up there, and for a long time that's all we had. And then about 3 years ago we had 2 employees full-time because we opened the lake full-time. And they found homeless use and other things that went on, even where the trails were proposed. I've brought proposals for those trails to the board several times, and we had NRCS and National Resource Conservation Service and the Resource Conservation District. It's called Butte County Resource Conservation District, and they have people on their staff that could lay out the trails and everything else. And so we've been considering those, and then they went away because we didn't have the money for it. Then the last question I have is, how much are they going to raise fees up there or to make that thing financially stable if we can't make it with one employee? And where are they going to provide security? The reason for the house being up there was to have 24/7 because he was on call if something happened up there in the evenings or days, and that happened. So I don't think this is a fair representation on the expenses and where they were used for. And I can't talk too much about security. We have people that will come up here with dogs and so forth and have to be nicely talked to take their dog home or put it back in the truck. And other things that are concerned with security. And then there's the safety of people going out there with their kayaks in the evening. And I think Greg hurt his back one evening helping a couple of women get a boat out of the lake after 9 o'clock at night. And he ended up laid up for a while. But these are all things that are important to me. I like Park and Rec. I don't know why we can't cooperate with them without them taking it over. We had the retired fire chief who had a couple of recreation projects at the lake. And a couple of years since the fire, of course, nothing's happened, that we cooperated with, and Greg helped them and so forth to get their, I think it was a triathlon, but it didn't include swimming in the lake. And one of the things that came up to us was the idea of having paddle boards on the lake and being legal. And that was stopped because people fall off paddle boards. And every other use up there, people can't go into the water. And they have to carry a little can with them in their boats in case they have to go to the bathroom or something. And this is all about it. And then there was a deal with clams, and not clams, but they attach themselves to the bottom of the boat. Mussels. And there was a state warning about that and so forth. So we had to have somebody inspect the boats to make sure there was no mussels on them. Where do we gain? Other than, I don't understand why we're even trying this, because we could have Park and Rec put on whatever they'd like to do, and we may or may not charge them any money and actually help them with it. But how are they going to raise the money if they're not going to do any better here on the revenue source? And 45,000, if that's all you've got for recreation, they're going to have to double that to even afford any kind of people up there, unless they go to the free service like you have a man up there right now. I've met him. He's a nice guy, and he's semi-retired. I think he's very personable and is sort of like a Greg, and get along with people fine. And I don't know why we can't do that.
Anybody else want to speak to this?
I just think, I see where you're at with it. I just think that when we're looking at trying to reduce our overhead costs in our post-fire life, that saving $45,000 may not feel like a lot, but there's a lot of risk and liability that we assume with it as well, without the security that we really do need. And I think that if we partner with Parks and Rec, that the security issue might be something that could be addressed with that agreement, and it would be a win for both.
I just see, that's why I brought up the thing about the park and the botanical garden, that was my idea to have a botanical garden. But anyway, we signed a memo of understanding with Park and Rec. They were able to raise enough funds to get access to that piece of property. It's 20 acres that PID owns, and it's even got a name for the future, and they have plans for it. But they couldn't raise the money to operate it and put it in the park. And no grants. You know, I like the man who manages the Park and Rec. One of my sons worked for him and thought he was a great guy. So I just question where they're going to get the money. Are these grants, like so often with grants lately, we'll get a grant and the grant doesn't come. We haven't got any. We got any grant money yet out of the fire?
Are we getting grant money yet?
We are.
I mean, out of the fire funds?
Yeah.
No, but there isn't a lot of grant funding that's been. It's all a timing base.
It's what based?
Timing. So a lot of the grant funds, like the hazard mitigation funds and all those, they take time to get applications in, to get competitive grants. We're working through the FEMA process right now, so we've gotten FEMA funds.
On several grants and thought they had a chance at it. Didn't get any of them for the park I'm talking about.
So, I mean, the potential motion today is to give Kevin permission to proceed with developing an MOU, but the MOU would come back to this board, the details. So if we get this draft MOU in front of us and we don't agree that they're proceeding in a way we'd like to see, then we have the ability to either amend it or make recommendations. And if you're concerned about the rate increases that they're projecting, then that's a question that I think we could direct Kevin to ask.
Well, see, we have customers up there that come up to fish, and I've even talked to some when Greg was there and talking to him, and he explained to me after the lady left, when she had her limit, that was her dinner, and they were low income, and they were dependent on the lake for fish. And so I'm going, okay, and then I'm going, where does Park and Rec presently managing the lake in their system?
But it isn't theirs to manage right now.
No.
But so I think those are the details that staff would have to negotiate with Parks and Rec. What is their plan? How will they make sure that people like the woman you're discussing still have access at a reasonable cost?
I don't know. I just think from my experience so far with Park and Rec, and the last manager was a very nice guy. I was friends with him, and my wife worked with his wife at High Life and all that. But he, as hard as he tried, he couldn't get any funds. And he was very diligent at trying that. And so I'm going, the check's in the mail, guys. You know, we got these grants out here, but the check's in the mail. We haven't seen anything. And I don't think Park and Rec has either. And Park and Rec is already, it's got at least 3 different parks that they own property around Paradise and in Concal, but I don't know if they have enough funds to develop those even. So I just have some real serious questions, and I don't think we're going to save $45,000 because I think the $45,000 is well spent on security. And if you look back through our discussions over the years, you'll find that the security in many cases was more important than the recreation part.
Emily, I got a question about an MOU. If we enter into an MOU agreement, either party can always, is that correct, pull out of the...
Depends on the terms.
Depends on the terms,
So
right.
you
how
could
it's
have
worded.
you would have a termination provision, and that would
Right.
support the notice period that either party would need to
Sure,
to provide.
sure. So, but there's going to be some kind of a...
Off-ramp? Yes.
Yes, okay.
But all we're talking about tonight is basically another word for feasibility study.
I think what Kevin is trying to do is
Okay.
get a flavor
Yes.
as to whether it's worth spending his time
Correct.
to pursue a potential MOU, terms unknown.
So I would think that they are probably more equipped to run that lake than the irrigation district is. You know, I'm on the board for the Gold Nugget Museum, and you know the Parks and Rec owns that property that we're on, in the same kind of situation where they're in it. You know, we've got some very specific guidelines for both of us to abide by, and exit strategies if we need to, and everything else. I've been very impressed with Parks and Rec since the fire. You know, their desire to pull people back up into town and the activities and things like that, and I think that that lake is probably an asset that would help them generate more visitation to the town.
I would agree. I think that when you have someone who specializes in parks and rec, not water, that the potential to build upon that asset that the community has is significant.
Are we going to still provide security for the lake?
I think
that's the key thing to me.
Well,
It's
I
our
think-
drinking water supply.
Well, and I think that's something that that needs to be part of the MOU so that the terms are clear. And I think the other piece that is essential to this is talking to your insurance provider and seeing what conditions they would have on this type of arrangement and what would be expected for you with regards to, you know, insurance that you're going to need to have, what Park and Rec would need to have, and then who's responsible for security and what that would need to entail.
And
So-
how much income would we get from Park and Rec?
Well, that I have no idea, but that would be part of the conversation that Kevin would have with Parks and Recs to figure out what they were thinking, and then it would come back to you as part of an entire MOU for your consideration.
Right.
And I have discussed security with the treatment plant and about human contact with the water. If a car driving into the lake, dogs, right? And I can tell you from Bill Taylor, who's the treatment plant superintendent, he says that based on today's technology of treatment, that they have no concerns with those type of activities being part of the lake, based on how everything, just the size, the treatment, everything. They really have no concern about that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear at this point. I know security and I know human contact definitely was an issue before the new treatment plant was in place, for sure. But once that new treatment plant and all of the chemicals that they use to treat the water, they haven't had much problem.
From the previous water treatment man too, there's a mile of stream after it leaves Paradise Lake, before it gets to Magalia Reservoir or to the bypass pipeline. And there's hardly any security in there. That's where Greg and his cohort found campers, homeless people, and got them out in time. So are we going to get security for that mile of creek coming down Little Butte Creek, before it hits to our Magalia Reservoir. And then the question is, well, the most current thing that's happened back east in the water business is amoeba. Amoeba is a small single-celled animal, only there's one now that is deadly. And they had it on the news the other night that a 12-year-old girl back east, because she went swimming, the amoeba, they're trying to save her life now. I don't know if it's in California or water systems or anything else, but that's a product that we would kill probably in the water treatment plant. But we have a mile of stream. We have the lake with people in it, in boats and what have you. And I'm going, one of the trainings I have is I ended up in a microbiology class in college with a bunch of nurses. And out of it, I learned how to use Petri dishes to get the different diseases and so forth and key them out. And the training was, wow. There's all sorts of things out there. And we have to protect our water supply. That's the number one thing for us. We could close the wreck part of it like they tried once, and it didn't work. I'd say both of them can go together. I don't know why we can't cooperate with them, but I do know that we have to be responsible for the security. I don't think Park and Rec is used to the kind of security we need to protect our water supply. Now, you guys go ahead and figure it out. I'm sure I'm going to lose the vote, but boy, just be sure to ask all the hard questions, and when Dan's here, you get the memo.
So you're not really losing anything right now, because really all we're talking about is making a motion to establish a memo of understanding and to get those details, to build those details in, so when Kevin brings that back to us, we can review it.
What I'm thinking about is we're losing, we have one man up there now, and he's a nice fellow. And we have people going around in a Jeep up there, and we're having problems with our neighbors that aren't coming out. And I'm going, we corrected those problems by having somebody up there in that house and having security. And I just go, I like Dan, I think he's a good guy and all that, but I'll just soon stop it before it gets going.
I think we understand your concerns, Bill, really, and we'll take that into consideration, for sure.
Yeah, and the expense is going to be Kevin's and Dan's and the people working for them to come up with the MOU.
Okay.
I move to provide direction to staff to proceed in developing a memorandum and understanding between PID and Park and Rec, complete with our security concerns and possible fees, upgrades later.
Got it.
To transition rec to PRPD.
See, Dan, you just took away my first motion. I wanted to make that motion.
Second it.
But I'll second it.
All right, very good. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed.
No,
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
thank you for listening.
Of course.
Well, Bill, I think everyone here shares your concerns, believe it or not.
Okay, so we move to which item we are?
10B.
E.
E.
10B, blue sheet.
Disclosure of district facilities, right.
No.
Oh.
Office of Vice President.
Vice President.
Oh, I'm sorry, Office of Vice President, okay. Yes, Office of Vice President, okay. So,
You saw the blue sheet?
oh yeah, the blue sheet, that is the cheat sheet for this, okay, very good. Okay, so we can accept nominations for the Office of Vice President? Is that correct?
You can. You can.
Oh, I
You
can.
accept.
Okay, I can.
I nominate Shelby Boston.
Oh, very good. Do we have any seconds on that?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It looks
Do
like
you
it's
accept the
unanimous.
Will just blue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations and thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Okay. Very good. All right. Okay, so, committees of the district.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's-
So, Greg, we had Dan Prevost on certain.
I see that.
And I just thought I'd ask the rest of the board here if is everyone content where they're at, or do you have a burning desire to move to a different committee or one of the ones that's available?
No, I don't
No?
need any changes.
I'm fine. I need a partner on administration and personnel.
Okay.
And
So,
finance.
so it's ignorance again pops out here. I'll take Bob's place on both of them if you so desire.
Sounds like you've had enough training to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If you're interested, then
oh, wait a minute. There's more.
always more.
There was only two a minute ago. Yeah. So for,
The Aqua Joint Powers needs to be filled. That's not an ad hoc, that's a designation.
Oh, Bob did that one.
We've got, you have 3 standing and 1 ad hoc, is that right?
Aqua is not ad hoc?
No, it's
No.
a designated representative of
It's a
the board.
It's not a committee either.
It's not a
No,
committee.
but
It's a,
that they've always filled it through this same type of process of designating a board member to be the representative for Aqua JPIA. There has to be somebody that's designated. You don't have to do anything really. I'm the alternate, and I go to all the meetings because I'm on the finance committee and on that. So I have the opportunity to vote for the district, but someone has to be listed as the director. Has to be a board member.
oh, I see.
Okay.
If you'd like to go to the
Take
conference,
them
you're
one
in.
by one.
You okay? You okay
Yeah.
with
So,
those?
so if I overwhelm myself, I'll let you know. How's
Oh
that?
yeah, that's fair
You gonna
enough.
take it? Okay, you're
Are you
it.
taking negotiating committee as well?
Yeah. Throw me under the bus, full force.
Okay. If otherwise, I would be willing. I
Oh,
didn't
yes.
want to do negotiating before, but I would do it if there's a desire. Of
We
the
need
board
two.
We need 2, so.
You're it.
Oh, okay.
What's
That's
that?
great. Between the two of you, please say one of you is going to do it. And
Who was-
just where I won't.
Who was negotiation? Yeah, could we take them one at a time?
Ann Rice and Bob.
So we're not confused. Can we start back
sure.
at the
Sure.
So we have administration and personnel and the
Stupid chair.
Greg.
treasurer hours and the.
Right.
Yes.
Greg says we'll take that. So
And then the finance committee as well.
Yes.
this committee. Okay.
He has he has the ability to.
Aqua Joint Powers Insurance Authority Director.
All right. So that was the back on the other page, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So then we have
Public.
the ad hoc.
I'll have the second page.
That we have. We have 2.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
You can take it. If you and Greg want to take it.
Oh, no, I'll Rochambeau you.
How about I just decline?
When are negotiations starting back up? Are we in a current MOU? Is it getting ready to start?
Right now, yeah. Or
You'll have it
this
tomorrow.
evening.
Hopefully you won't be. This should be easy.
Okay, yeah, I'll do negotiating.
We'll vote on.
You okay
I
with
think
you okay
just-
with that, Dan? That you want to?
Can we vote on all of them?
So, Greg, are you okay with being
Perfectly
on
content.
the ad hoc negotiating committee?
Yeah.
You're okay
Sure.
with that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you've got something coming up right away, right? Friday morning, I'm going in for a major back surgery, and so if you've got something coming right up, I just as soon pass on it.
Okay. Okay. No, that's
Okay.
okay. Thank you for sharing that.
I didn't want to share it, but I just want to make my
Sure.
point.
Okay. Okay, I think we're in agreement here, Shelby and Greg, on the ad hoc negotiating committee.
Okay.
Is that okay?
And
Aqua?
And
Aqua is Greg.
Aqua, Greg said he.
So, under the rules, the policies and procedures, it appears that there needs to be a vote of the board to switch the committees before the calendar year, even though
Sure.
this was.
there's kind of conflicting
so
provisions.
can we just
so
take a-
in an abundance of caution, if you don't mind voting on the change in committee assignments.
So,
that would be-
Georgianne, is it a roll call vote?
Yeah. you can do it all at once.
No, you can do it.
We can do it all at once.
Okay.
Okay. If somebody needs to make a motion.
Do we have a motion on our committee assignments?
I make a motion to make adjustments on the committees. Or is it
Mid-year?
mid-year?
Yeah, and those
Would that be,
adjustments,
it would be the appropriate nomination?
yeah. But can we just list out who's being appointed to what?
Sure.
Would you?
Georgiana,
Yeah, would you
could
walk
do
through
that?
it?
Or do you want to go one at a time?
Director Mowers is being appointed to the Administration and Personnel Committee, 16 Bob Prevost. And then to the Finance Committee, Director Mowers. For the Ad hoc Negotiating Committee, the appointments would be Director Mowers and Director Boston. And for the Aqua Joint Powers Insurance Authority, Director Representative, Director Mowers.
Yep. We don't need
Do you have a
to,
motion? Now you need a second.
we don't need to list the rest of the committees?
No.
No,
Okay.
there's no changes to those.
Very good.
There's an open motion.
Yes.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
So who seconded? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Thanks for the volunteerism. Okay.
Item D.
Item D.
It's considering authorizing closure of the district office on Friday, November 8th, in remembrance of the start of the campfire. So many of our employees were affected by the campfire. I'm sure it's going to be an emotional day for most of those employees, and to allow them to use that day on however they would like and have the office closed along with the transmission and distribution yard would be closed. The treatment plant would be staffed, but they would get holiday pay like normal holiday. This is not to, it's a one-time closure, so it's not a precedent setting of this would be a continuous holiday. It's just for the first year anniversary of it.
I totally support the plan.
Yeah, any comments? Yeah.
So I would make a motion to approve the recommendation of closing of the district office and other facilities with the exception of the treatment plant on November 8th, 2019 for the 1-year anniversary of the campfire.
I
I second.
Very
Great
good.
seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you for bringing that to us. Okay. So we have committee reports, and the only committee that met, I believe, is the Community Relations Committee. And Shelby and I, and of course Ward, who left, were in attendance. And, well, Shelby, why don't you start it off with the USDA?
So we had hoped to have the USDA join us at the community facilities, community relations meeting regarding the community facilities grant. And unfortunately, it didn't happen, so we're going to put it on to the next agenda. And we are really hoping that we'll have some ability to get some monies to, like Ward was really speaking about, those potential projects that would really make that garden a really positive addition to the community, especially not only drought tolerant, but also fire safe. So that was the hope around the USDA funds.
And the next thing was the demonstration garden, and we talked about the irrigation system was repaired. It has been functioning, so the plants have come back to some degree, and now, of course, with this rain, they're going to look even better. So things are progressing. Some plants have been replaced, and then the garden club is actually planning on doing a work day up there and actually trying to replace the residual plants that need to be replaced from the fire damage. So then Mickey had a really nice community outreach update. She's been working hard. The whole district's been working hard. How about that? You're all outreaching as far as I'm concerned. So But she gave us a really nice update on what's been going on. Of course, we had our public meeting on Monday, and that's a big outreach to the community right there. And I thought it went really well. I don't know what other people thought, but
Yeah.
I thought it was a great meeting, and
Really seems to justify continuing them.
Yeah.
But
We're
it
going to
really-
continue them until we don't feel like there's a need for them. And at this point, we
yeah,
don't see
people
that.
seem very supportive now. I mean, when you think about the first meeting and then
Yeah.
now where we're at, they're right there, so it's great.
Get the impression that they finally got to the point where they realized that most everybody here is a survivor,
Yeah.
and that everybody's in the same boat, and we're working for our friends and neighbors, and they just get it.
We're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Mickey did order some hats. I guess they're due any day, so we have some hats. We got some. We ordered some hats for the employees. Like a baseball style hat, and has a logo. And yeah, so I think you'll see some people around town now with hats. I think that'll be great. So
Will we be able to send those to like our mutual aid partners?
We're planning on it.
Excellent.
We're going to order extras and have those as mementos.
I know they all seem to want to take apart.
Yes.
I can't hear.
We're getting enough to send to the mutual aid partners as mementos
Oh, good.
for helping us out.
Right.
So one thing that they're finding a meter that has fire damage to it, and PID is signing it and thanking them for coming. And the individuals that take that home love it. They are setting that in their trophy case.
We're sending home contaminated parts.
Don't say that. It's just a damage meter.
right. What's the
I
liability
think
there?
maybe
Reminds-
we
I
should
took-
do challenge coins.
It's a challenge meter.
Better.
I had talked to a teacher in Chico, and right after the fire, a little girl brought home a piece from their house, and the teacher identified it as asbestos, and he actually had to take it from her, and it kind of backfired on show and tell.
Why it
that
didn't burn.
reminds me of that.
Asbestos. And then Aaron West came in and gave us a great update on the customer service folks and what's been going on there, and they've been doing a great job. Just lots of calls coming in every day, over 200 calls over 200 calls a day coming into that office, and it seems like they've really gotten on top of it. That's my impression, that they've really
There's still some people that don't think so.
Yeah, but I think overall, you're always,
Can't please them
the
all.
80-20 rule. I think I like to say 90-10.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about other board members, but the number of calls I've gotten have been decreased.
Right.
and-
Significantly.
Yeah.
I haven't got any for weeks now. I just wondered if you
Knock
took
on
my
wood.
phone number off the system or something.
Well,
You got another number, huh?
No,
I've got a guy that wants some gift cards purchased. I can give you his number.
Just like that, full circle.
But anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to echo Aaron's report out and just really give kudos to the staff. That front face of people coming in, they're very emotional, they're frustrated, they're angry, and that is a hard job.
It is.
It may not be physically hard like what the guys are doing out in the field, but the emotional wear and tear day in and day out, that is no fun.
And we've got a lot of new people right up front, and they're doing great. And all I see is smiling faces and very congenial, and
They seem
it's
to
great.
be diffusing
Yes.
a lot.
Yep.
And the story I like to tell is that I tell the individuals up there that they're doing things that are not being done anywhere in this whole United States. Is the first question you ask a person, is your home standing or is it burnt? That's not normal. That's not normal. And so that's what that's what they're dealing with, and taking somebody through some of the worst times of their life and trying to explain to them that we're here to help and that we're trying to bridge the gap of rebuild, and we're not trying to stop them. So, yeah, they're doing a great job.
Very good. Okay, I think that was the community relations meeting in a nutshell. So we got director's comments. Greg, do you have any comments from your first meeting tonight?
Oh, not so much about the first meeting, but I would say that just recently I was in talking to them about getting a house cleared, and you know, they did professional, great, smiley. I even tried to crack a joke about, you know, I wanted a map to go to Disneyland or whatever, because it used to be AAA, and of course it just went like this, but it was okay.
Yes.
No, I look forward to being a part of the board. I think it's going to be something that's good for the long term of Paradise and the district, and I hope you guys feel the same way.
We'll see. We'll let you know.
Thank you. Bill, anything?
Well, I've said enough for one night.
Okay. Shelby?
I'm good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and I just want to say thanks to all the board members and Greg for, you know, coming on and taking this on. I really appreciate that too. So, really great folks here, and I see a good future. We'll work together and solve these problems. So, thank you. All right, we have to adjourn to closed session with the conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957, Paragraph 6, Employee Organization, PID Designated Representatives, Emily. So,
I just one comment, I guess. It's 9:02. I can't remember the last time we got done this early to go to closed session.
Okay. Our new board member.